They thought Earth would fall in a single minute. New York burned first. But humanity doesn't break. It builds back harder. From ashes, we launched a fleet that shook the stars. Subscribe now. This is just the beginning of humanity's rise. The first sign was the silence. No planes, no cars, no chatter, no sirens. Just the low, thrumming hum that settled over Manhattan like a warning growl before a predator strikes. Then, without announcement or negotiation, the sky opened. The clouds turned to fire as a ship the size of a city block descended over the Hudson. People pointed, screamed, ran, some just stared, phones shaking in their hands, recording their final moments. The ship didn't hover. It struck. A vertical column of blue-white light tore through the Chrysler building in an instant, vaporizing steel, stone, and bone. The surrounding blocks followed in seconds. Shockwaves shattered windows across boroughs. A second beam hit Times Square. No warning. No pause. No mercy. People ran underground, into subways, basements, anything. The emergency broadcast system came online but offered no guidance. No one knew who was attacking. No demands. No insignias. No hails. Just destruction. The military scrambled jets, but nothing pierced the airspace. Everything man-made crumpled against invisible shields. Within hours, New York City, arguably the most recognized human landmark in the galaxy, was reduced to ruin. I was there. I was beneath East 46th, in the sub-basement of a midtown complex. My name is irrelevant. What I saw isn't. The aliens didn't land in the way humans thought invaders would. They didn't send soldiers or tanks. They sent machines, hovering constructs that pulsed with violet energy. They scanned, pulsed, and then fired. Streets turned to trenches. People to ash. They didn't collect bodies. They didn't chase survivors. Their goal wasn't extermination. It was erasure. In the silence of the basement, those of us who survived watched through shattered security feeds. Above ground, humanity was being rewritten, its skyline replaced by geometries that weren't meant for us. Great black pylons rose where our skyscrapers once stood. They throbbed with some kind of energy, reshaping the atmosphere. The sky began to dim, even in daylight. And then came the message. Not from a voice, but from every speaker, every screen, every frequency. This world is claimed. Submission is survival. Resistance is death. It didn't say who it was from. It didn't need to. The meaning was clear. The president never made a statement. No leader did. Communication blacked out globally. The attack wasn't limited to New York. We heard rumors. Tokyo was gone. Paris dark. Johannesburg lost. Beijing, radio silent. London had gone quiet after reporting. Descending obelisks. We weren't a city under siege. We were a planet being overwritten. The aliens didn't move quickly. They didn't need to. Their power was overwhelming. Their arrogance total. They treated us as if we were already defeated, already history. They expanded in calculated spirals outward from the cities they'd destroyed. Every few hours, a new burst of destruction bloomed somewhere across the globe. A new obelisk. A new silence. In the tunnels, we began to organize. Not in a military sense, we weren't soldiers, but in something older. We shared food, planned exits, mapped the safe zones. We salvaged batteries. We whispered in the dark. We stopped crying. And we began to listen. At night, when the world above was cloaked in unending hums and unnatural blue glows, we heard something else. Movements. Rumblings. The aliens were building. Not machines, not weapons, but structures. As if they intended to stay. As if Earth was already theirs. But they had miscalculated. They'd assumed our cities were our strength. They didn't realize our strength came after the collapse. After the loss. It came in the dirty tunnels, the silent prayers, the shaking hands gripping repurposed tools as makeshift weapons. It came from every survivor who whispered to another, "We're still here." When they took the city, they didn't understand what they were taking. They thought they'd claimed a geographical location. But New York wasn't just buildings. It was identity. It was the idea of humanity at its most bold, chaotic, proud. And when they leveled it, they did more than destroy, they lit a fire. Across the globe, the footage spread. Not through satellites, those were gone, but through survivors. On hard drives. On whisper nets. On ancient ham radios. Word traveled, New York was down. But we weren't. I remember a child, 9 years old, handing me a sketch they'd drawn in charcoal from a burned beam. It was crude, simple. A tall ship, with smoke coming out the top, rising above a broken skyline. The child looked at me, eyes hollow but defiant. "They won't get Earth," he said. "We're coming back." There's something about the human will that defies logic. We should have been extinct within days. No command structure. No central leadership. Infrastructure destroyed. But humanity adapted faster than anyone expected, faster than the invaders understood. Resistance wasn't planned. It was instinctive. One person helped another. Then another. And soon, we weren't isolated anymore. We were many. There were whispers of retaliation. Not from military channels, but from scientists. Engineers. Black sites with secret projects buried deep in mountains and oceans. Weapons once deemed too dangerous, too experimental, now saw the light again. And in those vaults, men and women with nothing left to lose began to ask one question. What if we hit back? Above us, the ships still loomed. Unstoppable. Untouchable. But they hadn't wiped us out. They hadn't gone far enough. One night someone intercepted a shortwave signal, not alien, but human, from across the Atlantic. The voice was garbled, weak, but the message was unmistakable. They're not gods. They bleed. The aliens thought they'd broken us in the first strike. That fear would do the rest. But they didn't understand what happens when you show humanity what it stands to lose. You ignite something ancient. You awaken a species that's crawled from extinction more than once. You turn survivors into soldiers. And you make a fatal mistake. Because now we remember New York. And we are coming. The first 72 hours after the attack were chaos. Governments collapsed into silence. Networks went dark. Satellites burned. The world's militaries were either offline or overrun. No coordinated defense existed. The invaders had struck with surgical precision, targeting infrastructure, communications, and leadership simultaneously. What remained was fear, raw, directionless fear. But something started to change by the fourth day. Not everywhere. Not from the top. From the margins. It began in Dakar. Then Santiago. Then parts of Eastern Europe. Smaller nations, ones often ignored in global power politics, took the first step. They broadcast a simple message, asterisk. We're not surrendering. If you're alive, respond. Asterisk. Someone did. Then another. Shortwave messages. Pirate radio. Morse code. Humanity began stitching itself back together from the bottom up. In Pakistan, an underground AI lab reactivated and linked with a surviving orbital telescope. They identified alien fleet patterns, predictable, methodical. In Brazil, engineers converted mining drones into aerial strike platforms. In Nigeria, a fragmented cyber warfare team hacked into abandoned satellites and created a relay. Humanity wasn't following leaders. It was becoming something new, coordinated through necessity, not hierarchy. The idea of the United Earth Defense Pact didn't come from a president or a general. It came from a technician named Arjun Verma in Kolkata, who patched together a signal that reached 32 different resistance cells. He didn't call it a government. He called it a coordination layer. A way to get out of each other's way and hit back harder. Within a week, old enemies began speaking again. Russia linked with the EU via hardened submarine cables. China shared orbital scans with NASA. The Pentagon, hidden deep under Colorado, authorized cross-border joint operations without delay. The rules were gone. Borders, flags, and bureaucracy meant nothing now. There was only one goal: survive. By day 10, the United Earth Defense Pact was real, not as a political entity, but a functional alliance. No central command. No speeches. Just action. Shared intelligence, pooled tech, and zero tolerance for ego. Scientists and military strategists met in virtual bunkers. Across encrypted servers, they reviewed every scrap of alien tech collected from fallen drones. The invaders had made a critical mistake. They hadn't destroyed every wreck. They didn't believe humans could understand their systems. But they were wrong. Reverse engineering began immediately. The invaders' ships used quantum entanglement for coordination, but they had physical processors, power cores, and propulsion systems. And humans were nothing if not fast learners under pressure. Recovered tech revealed a pattern. The invaders operated with rigid structure, no deviation, no flexibility. It was their strength, and their weakness. Humanity, in contrast, thrived in chaos. We improvised. We built weapons out of scraps, algorithms out of intuition, defenses out of desperation. What we couldn't replicate, we adapted around. Where their shields resisted lasers, we used projectiles. Where their armor shrugged off heat, we used kinetic force. We didn't match their tech, we subverted it. In the Arctic, an old geothermal facility was turned into a prototype launch pad for the first Earthborne response ships. They weren't pretty. They weren't graceful. But they were armed with tungsten rods and nuclear dampeners. Their sole mission: deliver payloads and return or burn. In underground labs from Nevada to Kyoto, engineers fused alien materials with human systems. AI cores were enhanced with quantum fragments. Fusion drives got a tenfold boost. The first human warship capable of orbit-to-stratosphere strike capability was born in under 15 days. Its name, Resolution. But this wasn't a war won by machines. It was held together by people, exhausted, starving, grieving, but unbroken. Civilians volunteered in droves. Mechanics became engineers. Farmers became medics. Coders became tacticians. Humanity reshaped itself not out of pride, but because there was no one else coming. Messages from occupied zones poured in. Voice memos. Videos smuggled through ruins. In New York, someone carved coordinates into the concrete of a destroyed bridge, marking a safe zone. In Seoul, rooftop signals flashed Morse code at passing recon drones. Every act of defiance was recorded, shared, and remembered. One particularly defiant message came from a 12-year-old girl in the ruins of Rome. She'd lost her family, her school, everything, but she found a working transmitter. Her broadcasts reached 23 nodes across Europe. Her message was clear, asterisk. If you can hear this, fight. Even if you think you can't win. Just make them bleed. Asterisk. That became the unofficial motto of the Defense Pact. The invaders were expanding, steadily, efficiently. But they were also slow. Arrogant. They treated Earth like a resource, not a threat. That gave humanity time. Not much. But enough. By the third week, Earth's orbit was partially stabilized. Makeshift satellites, some cobbled from old telecom junk, others from experimental stealth modules, began transmitting updated enemy fleet movements to ground forces. Coordinated strikes began on alien harvest zones. Not to reclaim land, but to prove a point: you don't invade Earth without consequence. Losses were immense. Casualties climbed. Cities remained fallen. But something irreversible had changed. The species that had once warred over borders, faiths, and flags had found a common purpose. For the first time in recorded history, humanity was no longer 1,000 divided voices. It was one. Fierce. Furious. Unified. The enemy still held the skies. Still controlled half the world's major cities. Still outgunned Earth by every metric. But they didn't understand the new equation. They weren't fighting nations anymore. They were fighting humans. All of them. Everywhere. And they had just woken up the wrong planet. The first human-made fleet to reach low orbit wasn't graceful. It was patched together from shuttle corpses, gutted space station parts, and retrofitted cargo freighters loaded with more explosives than shielding. There were no ceremonial launches, no parades, no speeches. Just countdowns, ignition, and silence. They called it Operation Skyhook. 83 crafts launched. 48 made it out of the atmosphere. 12 returned. The enemy had anticipated a response, but not this soon. Not this crude. The human vessels came in low, erratic, on broken trajectories. Their unpredictable flight paths made them harder to target. Half the alien drones sent to intercept were caught off guard by the sheer recklessness of the human approach. Still, the firepower disparity was brutal. Human ships relied on massed drivers and kinetic kill rounds. The enemy responded with precision plasma beams and pulse lances that disintegrated anything slower than light. The second wave was smarter. Crews used magnetic interference from Earth's magnetosphere to mask their launches. They rode solar radiation as cover. They deployed flares and decoys that mimicked alien energy signatures. Each human vessel carried a warhead not to survive, but to strike something, anything, before being vaporized. They called these ships coffin runners. One such vessel, the Phoenix Juno, managed to breach an alien drone carrier's external hull with a tungsten rod at 32,000 kilometers per hour. The detonation that followed didn't destroy the carrier, but it cracked its shielding. That was enough. Human radar tracked the ship falling into atmospheric descent, spiraling uncontrollably before vanishing behind clouds over the Indian Ocean. That wreck became a treasure trove. Salvage teams pulled fragments of the hull, still humming with residual energy. From it, they discovered something alien engineers hadn't expected: flaws. The energy shielding had gaps during recharge cycles. Power nodes had heat thresholds. The craft was designed for endurance, not adaptability. Humans took notes. Reverse engineering accelerated. Every battle, every loss, became data. The more they died, the more they learned. And in humanity's most brutal paradox, death became the greatest teacher. Orbital warfare evolved rapidly. Satellites were reborn as automated defense platforms. The ruins of the ISS were rigged with explosives and sent drifting toward enemy ships like a corpse packed with grenades. It detonated against a recon vessel, destroying both and creating the first debris cloud humans used as a makeshift minefield. Ground-to-space railguns were constructed in secret, buried in mountain ranges and camouflaged with heat diffusers. They fired dense projectiles at hypersonic speeds, not to destroy, but to scatter formations and break the enemy's perfect lines. Alien fleets began to adapt, but slowly. Their tactics didn't change quickly. They didn't anticipate Earth's tenacity or unpredictability. They expected coordinated militaries, not fragmented clusters acting with wild independence and suicidal creativity. In one battle near the exosphere, a human pilot named Commander Lu orchestrated a multi-vector ambush using nothing but 2 cargo freighters, 7 drones, and a pair of decommissioned satellites. He lured 3 alien fighters into a gravitational trap created by Earth's pull and an artificial magnetic anomaly. The alien ships overcompensated, collided mid-maneuver, and self-destructed. He didn't survive the blast, but the footage did. That tactic became standard protocol for hit-and-fade missions. Then came a breakthrough. A joint engineering team operating beneath the Andes successfully completed a hybrid reactor using salvaged alien energy cores. It powered the first human stealth-capable spacecraft, codenamed Wraith-1. It didn't use active propulsion. It drifted. It mimicked space junk. And it got within 3 kilometers of a command drone before discharging an electromagnetic pulse that short-circuited 3 vessels. A week later, Wraith-2 deployed a kinetic cluster minefield that shredded an entire recon fleet above Southeast Asia. Humanity had its first confirmed kill of a mothership-class enemy cruiser. The footage showed the cruiser's shields failing, the hull splitting apart, and dozens of alien escape pods scattering in all directions, only to be caught in the cascading shockwave. It was a moment of awe. Not just for what had been destroyed, but for what it meant. The impossible was no longer a myth. We could hurt them. Morale across Earth surged. Messages flooded the resistance networks. Recruits volunteered en masse. Old pilots returned to service. Retired engineers rebuilt old factories with newer, faster tools. Across the planet, people who had once hidden underground now looked up with defiance. But victory was far from secure. Alien reinforcements arrived in orbit within days. Larger. Smarter. Heavier. The new enemy vessels didn't rely on drones. They used centralized command units and networked formations. Their tactics shifted. They baited human forces, forced them into drawn-out chases, then annihilated them with coordinated bursts. Entire wings vanished in seconds. The third human fleet lost 60% of its force in 40 hours. But by then, losses weren't the end, they were data. Every destroyed ship left behind signals, radiation trails, telemetry. Every death fed into simulations. Human tacticians, assisted by rapidly improving combat AIs, began formulating probabilistic scenarios in real time. The more the aliens adapted, the more humanity improvised around their adaptation. We stopped playing defense. Operation Chimera was launched on the 65th day of the war. Its goal wasn't to reclaim space, it was to seize technology. 4 human stealth ships infiltrated a damaged alien relay station orbiting over the Pacific. Their mission: capture its core and get out. 2 ships were lost on entry. One was crippled after transmitting data. But one made it back, with an intact alien data cache. It contained targeting protocols, energy signatures, and even partial logs, written in an alien code now partially decrypted. For the first time, humanity saw the enemy not as gods, but as soldiers. Orders, hierarchies, failure reports. Disputes among commanders. Data streams revealing disagreements about Earth's resistance. The most important line was timestamped only days before. Unexpectedly high resistance from primitives. Recommend reassessment of risk protocol. Possible Category A escalation. They were afraid. Not of our weapons. Of our refusal to die quietly. This changed everything. The enemy started reinforcing defenses around orbit, spreading their forces thinner, diverting attention from the ground. That gave Earth breathing room. Just enough to rebuild. Just enough to push forward. Orbital war wasn't over. It was escalating. But for the first time in this war, humanity looked to the stars not with dread, but with purpose. Because now we weren't just surviving. We were hunting. The shift happened when survival stopped being the only goal. Once humanity proved it could strike back, the mission changed from resistance to escalation. Weapons alone wouldn't win this war. Earth needed to outthink, outbuild, and out-evolve an enemy that had likely crushed a dozen worlds before us. So, humans did what they always do when faced with a superior threat. We got dirty, fast, and creative. The wreckage of every downed alien craft became a treasure map. Not just for power cores or alloy samples, but for architecture, logic, material behaviors. Alien metals were non-reactive to heat but fractured under specific harmonic frequencies. Shields deflected plasma but overloaded when hit by magnetically accelerated tungsten slugs. Their sensor arrays were blind to irregular electromagnetic noise, which could be recreated by 20th century analog tech. Every weakness was catalogued, exploited, and weaponized. Human engineers began fusing alien material with conventional systems, bypassing the need to understand everything before using it. If it worked, it was deployed. If it failed, it was studied. There was no perfectionism. Only iteration. In South Korea, weapon labs produced a hybrid Gauss cannon that fired uranium-depleted slugs at hypersonic velocity. It used reverse-engineered alien superconductors to maintain coil integrity. One shot melted the cannon's internal chamber. The second shot blew the test platform apart. On the third version, it fired clean, and ripped through an asteroid-sized target dummy with enough force to crack bedrock a kilometer deep. It was approved for field deployment the same day. Russia revived Project Borealis, a failed orbital railgun platform from the Cold War era. With alien energy cores, they turned it into a solar-powered mass accelerator capable of firing from orbit directly into Earth's atmosphere with surgical precision. First target, an alien processing tower in the remains of Cairo. The projectile hit at Mach 19. Nothing remained. In North America, underground fabrication zones began constructing ships from Earth-based alloys reinforced with alien composites. They weren't elegant, they were lethal. Multiple hulls. Redundant systems. Designed to survive punishment, not avoid it. Human ships became battering rams with engines. Some lacked life support systems entirely, crewed by volunteers wearing exosuits for weeks at a time. The greatest leap came from biochemistry. Alien physiology was resilient, but their tissue samples revealed vulnerability to Earth's native bacteria. While they adapted quickly to physical trauma, they had no immunity to Earth-borne microbes. A covert biowarfare unit developed non-lethal bacteria strands engineered to target alien respiratory systems. Airborne deployment began in reclaimed cities. Within weeks, surveillance picked up signs of hesitation in patrol drones, withdrawals, delays, containment zones. They knew. Psychological operations intensified. Radio jammers blasted human voices across enemy frequencies. Recovered alien speakers were used to mimic their own language, inserting conflicting commands during operations. Hacked drones were painted with human graffiti and sent back toward alien lines. It wasn't just about killing, it was about destabilizing, making the enemy question their superiority. For every alien innovation, humanity responded with something brutal, simple, and terrifying. They built the satellite net that dropped synthetic carbon clouds into upper orbit, blinding enemy sensors for hours. They launched thousands of reflective balloons filled with nanofog to mimic heat signatures and scatter targeting arrays. Cities that had fallen now became traps, lined with volatile chemical mixtures that turned entire blocks into incendiary mazes. Alien drones began retreating from active zones more frequently. Their recon ships flew higher. Their patrols increased in size. They no longer treated humans as background noise. Now we were a variable. It wasn't without cost. For every weapon that worked, 3 failed catastrophically. Testing centers were obliterated. Crews died in live-fire trials. Laboratories disappeared under malfunctioning energy reactions. The pace of development was insane, but there was no alternative. The war wasn't waiting for perfection. It was being won through momentum. One particular advancement changed the trajectory of Earth's counteroffensive. Deep under Greenland, a physics research group completed the first gravitational manipulation array small enough to mount on a ship. It didn't produce artificial gravity. It bent space in precise vectors, short pulses that distorted projectile trajectories and warped light. It wasn't ready. It was dangerous. But it was deployed. The EHS Jotun became the first ship in the fleet to use gravitational distortion offensively. In one battle, it turned an enemy energy beam back on its source by folding a segment of space in front of it. The alien ship collapsed in on itself. The effect couldn't be replicated cleanly afterward, but the footage sent a message: humanity was no longer just fighting harder. We were fighting smarter. Across Earth, morale surged. Resistance groups used modified alien drones to deliver payloads. 3D-printed weapons were distributed via orbital drops. Underground bunkers became command centers. Civilian hackers fed false data into enemy reconnaissance systems, redirecting their ships into dead zones. The most terrifying project, however, was Project Scepter. Developed in secrecy beneath the ruins of Johannesburg, it was Earth's first purpose-built capital-class warship, constructed from alien alloy, powered by twin cores scavenged from fallen carriers, and crewed by specialists pulled from every surviving branch of the global military. It was designed not just to fight, but to strike fear, massive, angular, black, and devoid of all identifying insignia. When it launched, enemy sensors went dark for 17 minutes. Whatever cloaking systems were used, they worked. When it reappeared, it had already destroyed 2 orbital control beacons and crippled the command node. The message was clear. Earth was not just reacting anymore. Earth was preparing to dominate. Alien behavior began shifting. Patrols doubled in density. Reinforcements arrived from further regions of space. The invaders adapted faster now, but their reactions became more conservative. They were cautious, calculating, less confident. Humanity, on the other hand, leaned into chaos. We embraced risk. Every battle was both data and blood. Every loss a lesson. Every victory a springboard. The cost was unimaginable. Billions dead. Cities erased. Oceans poisoned. But the survivors had become something more than they were. Not just smarter. Not just angrier. We were becoming architects of a new kind of warfare, one born of desperation, brutality, and intellect. The enemy came expecting to fight soldiers. What they found instead was a planet that fought like a death world, with teeth sharpened by extinction, with minds that never stopped calculating, and with a hatred that didn't burn. It calculated, engineered, and launched payloads into the void. And Earth had only just begun. In the ruins of New York, beneath collapsed towers and scorched streets, humanity's pulse never stopped beating. The aliens thought they had sterilized the city, reduced it to smoldering bones and shattered glass. But beneath that silence, life adapted. The survivors didn't wait for orders. They didn't ask permission. They became resistance. No formal hierarchy existed. No uniforms. Just scattered groups of civilians who refused to die quietly. They scavenged supplies, mapped out tunnels, learned alien patrol patterns, and repurposed weapons from the dead. Burned-out subway stations became bases. Libraries became armories. Hospitals became fabrication labs. What little power remained was rerouted through salvage generators, some rebuilt from the wreckage of alien drones. They called themselves the Ashwalkers. Some were engineers. Others were teachers, cooks, janitors, teenagers. Anyone with a reason to fight. Their leader wasn't a general, but a trauma medic named Lyra Mendez, who had watched the fall of her hospital in the first wave. She wore no insignia and carried no sidearm. But when she spoke, the broken listened. She didn't inspire with speeches. She led by surviving every raid, every operation, every firestorm. The others followed her because she refused to die. The Ashwalkers' first victories were small. An ambush on a patrol drone. A stolen energy cell. But each success became leverage. More joined. More weapons were scavenged. Information became currency. They tracked enemy patterns, experimented with signal jammers, and learned how to move without triggering detection. Alien scanners, it turned out, were blind to certain organic chemical signatures, especially those emitted by burning sulfur. So they doused themselves in it, choking on the fumes, reeking of rot, but invisible. The aliens noticed the growing resistance and retaliated with brutality. They flooded zones with automated sentries, leveled entire neighborhoods suspected of harboring survivors, and deployed disintegration pulses that turned concrete into liquid. Yet, for every street they erased, another trap was set. The Ashwalkers turned demolition into tactics, collapsing buildings on enemy patrols, luring them into sinkholes lined with rebar and explosives. Their most effective weapon wasn't stolen tech or repurposed alien hardware, it was fear. Not theirs. Theirs was long gone. It was the enemy's. The Ashwalkers learned that alien formations hesitated when returning to areas where patrols had vanished. They would scan longer, fly higher, deploy extra drones. That hesitation was used again and again. Every alien death was made theatrical. Bodies strung up under bridges. Symbols painted in their blood. Audio lures mimicking distress signals. Warnings carved in dozens of languages. Asterisk. You are not safe here. Asterisk. Psychological warfare became doctrine. Civilians played recordings of screaming infants through damaged intercoms. Drones flew loops, broadcasting human laughter distorted through filters. When aliens began marking resistance cells for annihilation, the Ashwalkers relocated faster than they could be tracked. They built false camps as bait. Explosive rigs inside decoy shelters. Entire streets wired to collapse the moment a scout hovered overhead. One raid recovered an alien translator drone, a sleek orb designed to mimic human tone and language. They rewired it, corrupted its data core, and began broadcasting taunts across the alien network in their own dialect. Short phrases. Simple. Clear. Asterisk. You failed. Asterisk. Asterisk. You're dying here. Asterisk. Asterisk. You're not the first. Asterisk. Asterisk. We don't surrender. Asterisk. The effects were immediate. Alien patrols increased erratically. Supply ships rerouted. Entire sectors were locked down for reasons the Resistance never understood. They had become more than a nuisance. They were now classified as a variable. And then came the data slate. Recovered from the wreckage of an alien commander's transport, it held partial logs translated by human linguists. The slate wasn't just tactical, it was philosophical. The invaders didn't wage war for territory or dominance. They considered themselves above conquest. What they saw was order, predictable, stable, quiet civilizations. Earth, in their logic, was a mistake. Too chaotic. Too emotional. Too resilient. Their plan was to erase instability by eliminating the source. They called it civilization cleansing. They saw resistance as evidence of corruption. Humanity's refusal to die wasn't just an obstacle, it was, in their terms, an anomaly. A sickness. Something to be corrected by force. But in trying to erase it, they only spread it further. The Ashwalkers leaked the contents of the slate across the Resistance networks. Every survivor read the line that mattered, asterisk. Their capacity for regeneration exceeds projections. Emotional defiance appears heritable. Recommend full biosphere sterilization. Asterisk. In that one sentence, Earth understood everything. The aliens weren't just here to win. They were here to make sure we never rose again. From that day on, the Resistance changed. They no longer fought for freedom or land. They fought to deny the enemy the satisfaction of control. Every bomb planted, every ambush executed, every ruined patrol was a rejection of erasure. They began coordinating with other cells in occupied zones, Los Angeles, Berlin, Shanghai. Each had their own names, their own tactics, but they shared one belief: existence was defiance. Breathing was resistance. They began tracking enemy weakness across regions. One zone, known as Blacklight Sector, reported instability in alien gravity wells when disrupted by seismic shock. The Ashwalkers used this information to tunnel beneath a control pillar and detonate a charge strong enough to destabilize the entire sector. A crater swallowed 4 towers. The feedback pulse fried enemy comms for days. Victory? No. But it was a reminder. A survivor captured during the aftermath was interrogated by an alien field commander. The transcript, later recovered from a hacked relay, showed a simple exchange. Asterisk. Why do you fight? Asterisk. Asterisk. Because you made the mistake of assuming we'd stop. Asterisk. The Ashwalkers didn't disappear. They multiplied. Every city lost became another opportunity. They stopped wearing masks. They left their symbols on enemy installations. They hacked broadcast towers to play lullabies, static, radio chatter from extinct cities. They turned fear into a weapon sharper than steel. The aliens had taken New York in a matter of hours. But now, weeks later, they still couldn't hold it. Because every time they stepped into the dark, something exploded. Every time they thought the city was pacified, another sector rose. Every time they believed Earth was finished, someone reminded them. We are still here. And we are not done. The enemy had spread too fast. Their control zones were wide, but stretched thin. They had focused on key cities and orbital dominance, but their rear lines were exposed. That weakness had been identified by the UDP's new tactical AI, Archive. Using data gathered from downed ships, intercepted comms, and field reports from resistance cells, Archive detected a critical vulnerability in the alien command network orbiting Jupiter's moon, Europa. Europa had been transformed into a command relay station, one of 3 major hubs maintaining real-time coordination between Earth's occupied zones and the broader invasion fleet. Destroying it wouldn't win the war, but it would blind the enemy across half the solar system. Earth would have room to breathe and strike. The operation had no name. It wasn't ceremonial. It wasn't announced. It was executed. Earth's first deep space combat fleet, Vanguard Unit Alpha, was deployed in complete radio silence. Comprised of stealth destroyers, cloaked insertion pods, and gunships refitted with gravity benders and AI-assisted rail cannons, the fleet moved fast and low, avoiding patrol sectors entirely. They used the shadow of Jupiter to conceal their approach, riding its radiation belt to scramble alien scans. Their mission was not to fight the enemy head-on. It was to gut their eyes. The enemy response was immediate once detection occurred. But it was chaotic. The alien fleet over Europa had grown complacent. They hadn't anticipated Earth launching anything beyond Mars, let alone with precision. Their early response units scrambled into disorganized formations. That was the opening. Human forces split into 3 assault vectors. The first targeted the command satellites orbiting Europa, massive relay stations that pulsed with artificial gravity and beam communications across hundreds of units. Using magnetically accelerated EMP drones, Earth's destroyers disabled the first 2 satellites without a single human loss. The third was harder. It fought back. What Earth's tacticians hadn't predicted was the emergence of a new alien escort class, hybrid drones with faster maneuverability and adaptive countermeasures. They struck quickly, disrupting Earth's formation. The Spearhead, one of the fleet's flagships, took a direct hit and lost half its systems before activating emergency cloaking and ramming itself into a drone cruiser to complete its payload delivery. The explosion crippled the alien flank and gave Earth's insertion team enough space to proceed. 5 pods carrying elite boarding teams pierced Europa's orbital station shield grid and made contact with the structure. They didn't go in to seize territory. They went in to plant a bomb. The explosive wasn't nuclear. It was worse. It was a gravity destabilizer, a device created in Earth's new black labs, capable of causing localized collapses in artificial mass fields. The result wasn't an explosion. It was a silent collapse. Matter folding into itself, tearing anything nearby into distorted wreckage. They left it embedded inside the station's mainframe. The team didn't escape. They didn't try. 6 minutes later, the station folded in on itself. No fire. No flare. Just sudden absence. The silence that followed was picked up by every sensor in the alien network. Every drone paused. Every ship hesitated. The line went dead. And Earth struck again. Human vessels poured rail cannon fire into the distracted enemy line. Multiple alien cruisers lost shielding within minutes. Several tried to retreat, only to run directly into timed mine clusters launched earlier by cloaked drones. Each detonation was followed by magnetic bursts to disable escape pods. In under an hour, the Europa relay network was gone. With the command chain shattered, alien fleets across Earth's orbit went dark, still operational, but uncoordinated. Their attacks lost synchronicity. Their responses delayed. Entire patrol sectors withdrew. Resistance networks across Earth reported decreased aggression within 12 hours. The psychological impact mattered just as much. For the first time, humanity had not just defended or retaliated, they had struck deep into enemy control and emerged victorious. Propaganda broadcasts across occupied zones declared, *, Europa is free. They are not untouchable. *. The aliens tried to cover it up. A replacement relay was constructed near Ganymede within days. But it wasn't the same. The damage had been done. Their myth of invincibility was fractured. Earth didn't stop. The data retrieved from the Europa station before detonation was minimal, but enough. It contained evidence of more than just command structures. It exposed an internal directive. The alien fleet was stretched beyond its capacity. Reinforcements from their home system were delayed. Supply chains were vulnerable. Morale among certain caste divisions was degrading. That intel changed everything. It revealed the invaders weren't unified. They were fractured by doctrine, by hierarchy, by disagreement over Earth's resilience. Some factions wanted escalation. Others advocated containment. A few even recommended retreat. Human analysts saw opportunity in division. Counter-operations were planned. Human vessels began targeting supply convoys and support structures. They planted false signals suggesting rival alien factions were sabotaging missions. Alien command ships received conflicting orders, some originating from hacked beacons broadcasting fake ident codes. Confusion spread. More importantly, it bought time. Earth expanded its orbital manufacturing efforts, deploying construction drones to the edge of Mars. New ships rolled out weekly, faster, smarter, deadlier. Smaller planetary stations went online, including one in Venus' upper atmosphere designed to monitor alien activity across the inner system. The Battle of Europa didn't just shift the war, it redefined Earth's role in it. We were no longer cornered prey. We were predators. Calculated, deliberate, and lethal. The alien fleets adjusted their tactics. They reinforced their formations, pulled back from overextended sectors, began using decoys. But they were reacting, not leading. Humanity had taken initiative. Back on Earth, survivors in the ruins of New York painted new graffiti over alien wreckage. Asterisk. They took the sky. We took it back. Asterisk. No one knew how long the tide would hold. But for now, Earth had momentum. Earth had weapons. Earth had will. And now, Earth had a victory the galaxy would remember. The destruction of the Europa Command Hub sparked more than just strategic gain, it ignited defiance across every occupied region. Resistance cells that had once been fragmented, surviving in silence, suddenly grew bolder. Smugglers became supply chains. Underground engineers became weapons manufacturers. Information began to move faster than the enemy could adapt. The idea of fighting back was no longer suicide. It was duty. From Johannesburg to Jakarta, localized uprisings began striking with surgical precision. They didn't try to win battles, they disrupted enemy logistics. Rail lines, atmospheric siphons, energy conduits, any infrastructure the aliens relied on became a target. Resistance fighters didn't need to hold ground. They just needed to make the cost of occupation unbearable. The alien response was brutal. Civilian purges, energy-scorched zones, biological suppression fields. But every act of terror only fueled the fire. Earth had seen dictators before. Empires. Occupiers. None had succeeded in breaking human resolve. These aliens were no different. In the ruins of Shanghai, a network of former urban engineers used sewer lines to move weapons beneath patrol routes. In Mexico City, abandoned metro tunnels housed command centers disguised with heat-suppressant canopies and old signal routers. Resistance was decentralized, faceless, and impossible to crush entirely. For every 10 lost, 20 more rose. But raw defiance wasn't enough. Victory required precision, and Earth's scientists delivered. The UDP unveiled the Black Glass Project, a multi-spectrum stealth platform designed to infiltrate alien sensor ranges undetected. It wasn't just camouflage, it was sensor inversion, reflecting false data across every scan frequency. For the first time, human forces could operate in real time within enemy zones without immediate retaliation. Black Glass platforms began coordinating deeper strikes. Not just sabotage, but asset capture. One such mission, Operation HFY, focused on stealing a living alien power core, something never done before. Alien cores weren't mechanical, they were bioreactive, semi-sentient, and tuned specifically to fleet vessels. Stealing one meant cracking both language and biology. But the UDP had spent months doing exactly that. Linguists, neurologists, and cryptographers had broken down enough of the alien's signal language to interface indirectly. Enough to issue false commands. Enough to suppress alert systems. Operation HFY succeeded with staggering precision. Using Black Glass shuttles, a squad of zero-G operators penetrated a downed alien vessel near the ruins of Istanbul, extracted a live core, and returned before the enemy even realized a breach had occurred. That core would later power the first human-built interplanetary stealth cruiser, the omen. Success bred acceleration. Earth's momentum increased. The omen became the spearhead of a new doctrine: deep infiltration and total disruption. While visible forces kept the enemy distracted with skirmishes and uprisings, the omen and its sister ships slipped behind lines, planting disruption arrays, intercepting fleet protocols, and uploading invasive logic loops into alien navigation systems. Within a month, the alien fleet's synchronization degraded by nearly 30%. But the real shift came when Earth did something unthinkable. It broadcast a message, not of surrender, not of resistance, but of diplomacy. Using encoded alien syntax, Earth's Black Signal team hijacked a mid-orbital comm relay and transmitted a single sentence directly into alien fleet systems. Asterisk. We are not your resource. We are your mirror. Asterisk. The message sparked chaos. Internal communications among the alien fleet showed signs of fragmentation. Not all castes within their species had supported full conquest. Some believed Earth would fall within days. Others warned against provoking long-term resistance. Now, those disagreements boiled over. Alien command protocols showed evidence of purges, of reshuffling leadership, of emergency recall orders. Earth didn't wait for them to reorganize. UDP launched its most widespread global offensive yet, Operation Hammerwake. It wasn't a single strike, it was a storm. Resistance units across 47 active zones launched simultaneous disruptions, energy grid overloads, drone misdirection pulses, power siphoning, and atmospheric interference towers. Everything they'd built, all the tech reverse engineered or stolen, was thrown into the field at once. The purpose wasn't to win every battle. It was to break the illusion of control. And it worked. In New Delhi, alien garrisons retreated after EMP mines blanketed their command towers. In Buenos Aires, an entire dropship squadron was brought down using micropulse jammers seeded through abandoned buildings. In Sydney, a platoon of human operators used backdoor uplinks and alien drones to turn them on their own commanders. The enemy started pulling back. Not entirely. Not everywhere. But in pockets. They began abandoning overextended zones, reallocating forces to defend central hubs. That was their next mistake. By consolidating, they gave Earth fixed targets. And Earth had weapons. The rail cannon satellite grid, previously incomplete, was now operational. Linked through quantum pulse relays and synchronized via black glass encryption, the system allowed Earth to fire kinetic rods from orbit with surgical precision. Each impact struck with the force of a small nuke, but without radiation fallout. The aliens called it the Falling Wrath. Their forward bases couldn't defend against it. The tide had turned. What had begun as survival was now escalation. Humanity wasn't just holding the line, they were shoving it back. But this wasn't without cost. In Moscow, entire districts collapsed after a retaliatory plasma strike. In Lagos, the enemy detonated a gravity bomb to prevent a resistance capture of a weapons cache. Millions still died. The scars deepened. The stakes never lessened. But the will didn't break. If anything, it hardened. Earth had learned how the enemy thought, how they moved, how they structured warfare around hierarchy, rigidity, and protocol. Humanity had none of that. What it had was rage, memory, ingenuity, and an unshakable refusal to vanish. The enemy had come to conquer a species. What they found instead was a force of nature. And Earth was just getting started. The war was no longer about survival. It was about dominance. Earth's resistance had transformed into an offensive force, capable of real-time retaliation, coordinated disruption, and deep space sabotage. But even with tactical wins stacking up, the truth remained: the enemy was vast, ancient, and still heavily entrenched across the planet. Victory required not just battles, but breaking the will of an empire that had never lost a planet. To do that, Earth needed something more, a strike that would echo across their entire civilization. UDP's analysts found the key buried in stolen alien code, the Ark node. An ancient core buried beneath Antarctica, long dormant until the enemy had activated it during their early occupation. It wasn't just a power station. It was a relay connected directly to their homeworld. Through it, they could transmit entire fleets of data, issue orders across light years, and receive reinforcements faster than Earth could track. It wasn't just command, it was their tether to authority. Cut that tether, and Earth wouldn't just isolate their fleets, it would sever the Empire's hand from its weapon. But the Ark node was buried under kilometers of alien alloy, ice, and electromagnetic shielding. It was the most fortified position on the planet. No traditional assault could breach it. Not with ground troops. Not with orbital strikes. The only option was infiltration combined with internal destabilization. A joint operation, codenamed Severance, was formed with a singular goal: shut the Ark node down permanently. Severance relied on a multi-pronged approach. While orbital decoys engaged alien picket fleets above the southern hemisphere, Earth launched 7 stealth capsules filled with exoclimatized commandos and AI drones. They weren't expected to return. Their job was to breach the node from below, through deep Earth tunnels formed from decades-old geothermal research facilities now retrofitted for warfare. As the operation commenced, Earth initiated a global blackout. Every major human-controlled comms node went silent. No broadcasts. No signals. Just dead air. To the enemy, it looked like a collapse. A desperate silence before surrender. But underground, Earth was making its most aggressive play yet. The commandos bypassed patrols using ghost tags, code-injected devices that mimicked alien life signatures. It fooled their sensors long enough to reach the subchamber directly beneath the Ark node. From there, the human engineers activated a phase disruptor seeded into the geothermal pipe networks. It wasn't a weapon. It was a frequency shift generator, calibrated to detune the alien alloy lattice protecting the node's base structure. For 10 seconds, the shield glitched. That was all the time needed. AI drones surged upward with atomic lace drill bits, penetrating the base and injecting viral code directly into the control system. The virus wasn't designed to destroy. It was designed to reprogram, every logic tree inverted, every feedback loop corrupted, every signal rerouted to point inward. The node began consuming itself. But something happened no one expected. As the node destabilized, it transmitted a burst signal toward deep space. Not a distress call. Not a command. A message. And Earth received an answer. An unknown fleet signature, larger than anything previously encountered, pinged Earth's orbit 2 hours later. Not an attack formation. Not cloaked. It didn't fire. It just watched. UDP scientists decoded the returning signal and confirmed what many feared: the homeworld had finally noticed. Until now, Earth had been a contained incident. Now, it had the Empire's attention. But that wasn't fear, this was opportunity. Earth didn't hide. For the first time, it broadcast a direct message in the alien tongue, constructed from months of linguistic and contextual analysis. It said only one thing. Asterisk. We see you now. Come and try. Asterisk. That broadcast rippled through alien communication lines like a detonation. Across the globe, their forces began behaving erratically. Orders conflicted. Hierarchies broke down. Entire platoons stood idle, unsure whether to advance or retreat. Earth's viral logic had reached deeper than expected. It wasn't just the node that had been corrupted. The AI protocols embedded in their command structure had inherited the signal loop. Their own network no longer trusted itself. This wasn't just a disruption. It was spiritual warfare. The aliens operated on absolute obedience. On unbroken code. On precision. Earth had shown them what chaos felt like, and now, their own machines began to mirror human unpredictability. Some alien drones stood down. Others turned on their own command units. Several even broadcast surrender signals, garbled, fragmented, but unmistakable. Meanwhile, Earth pushed harder. Resistance forces launched a third wave of coordinated planetary strikes, not at soldiers, but at infrastructure. At food synthesis plants, atmospheric processors, energy harvesters. Anything the aliens depended on to maintain occupation. One by one, those supports crumbled. The Ark node's destruction meant reinforcements from the Empire's core systems would take longer, months, even years, to arrive with any cohesion. That window was everything. Earth accelerated its orbital shipbuilding, mass-producing stealth carriers and interplanetary drone relays. The Omen fleet was now 5 ships strong and expanding. Humanity was no longer reactive. It had entered the age of strategic dominance. And the enemy knew it. Satellites captured footage of alien ships launching from Earth's surface, leaving the planet entirely. Not tactically. Not in retreat formation. They fled. Certain factions within the invading force had made their choice: abandon Earth and survive, rather than be consumed by the chaos humans had unleashed. But even amid victory, UDP remained cautious. Because something else had changed. The message Earth had received wasn't just a detection ping. It contained structure, information, possibly even identity. Someone or something out there now recognized Earth as a peer, or a threat, or a challenge. And they were watching. Humanity didn't know what would arrive next. But Earth had already made its declaration. No more silence. No more submission. From now on, Earth wasn't just defending its world. It was stepping onto the galactic stage, with weapons, with memory, with rage, and daring any empire to come forward. Because now they knew. This planet fights back. The aftermath of the Ark node's destruction triggered more than the collapse of the enemy's Earth-side control. It signaled a turning point. Across the globe, formerly occupied zones began lighting up with coordinated human signals, UDP-approved frequencies now pulsing with confidence. Entire regions reclaimed their skies. No longer prisoners, civilians in Europe, South America, and Africa rose in synchronized defiance. The global resistance had matured. What was once underground now walked in daylight, armed and unafraid. In New York, the first city to fall, the aliens had made their strongest bastion. Their command temple stood at the site of what used to be the United Nations, a cruel irony. It wasn't just a symbol of their conquest. It was a living monument, designed to remind humanity that their governance was over. Now, it became Earth's final proving ground. Operation Final Echo was launched to erase that monument. Not for vengeance, but for closure. Every nation still standing contributed to the effort. Old rivalries disappeared. Soldiers who had once stood oceans apart now trained side by side. Former enemies now allies bound by shared scars. Humanity had learned something the enemy never accounted for: how to unify under pain, how to grow from suffering, how to weaponize loss. The operation's goal was surgical, not theatrical. No grand explosions. No long sieges. The temple had to fall not as a ruin, but as a message. The enemy needed to see it dismantled by precision, not rage. Teams were inserted through subterranean networks, guided by surviving New York engineers who remembered every inch of the old city. These weren't just military raids, they were cultural reclamations. Artists, historians, even linguists embedded with squads, ensuring that what was destroyed was documented, and what was salvageable could be restored. It took 7 hours. 7 hours to bring down what took the enemy months to build. Not a single human life was lost. When the structure collapsed, Earth didn't cheer. It didn't broadcast a triumphant anthem. The live feed, distributed across all global networks, was silent. A wordless reclaiming. The world didn't need noise. The ruins spoke for themselves. From that moment, a shift occurred, not just in humanity, but in the enemy. Captured transmissions revealed a crisis among their upper ranks. Many began questioning the invasion, questioning the cost. The virus seated in the Ark node had done more than disrupt signals. It had infected thought hierarchies. Command algorithms began interpreting human resistance not as statistical anomalies, but existential errors. Some alien leaders feared Earth was becoming a contagion. Not physically, but ideologically. And they weren't wrong. Earth's defiance wasn't just a defense, it was a broadcast. Across the stars, other subjugated worlds had begun intercepting fragments of Earth's transmissions. stray code, voice logs, even unfiltered emotional recordings. For the first time, resistance became contagious. Other planets stirred. Some remained quiet. Others began to test their restraints. Humanity's war was becoming a signal. UDP detected strange phenomena at Jupiter's edge, quantum anomalies matching no known enemy signature. At first, they feared reinforcements. But scans confirmed it was different. A probe. Ancient. Not enemy tech, but something older. It pulsed with familiar patterns. Earth frequencies echoed back to them. Someone had heard Earth's cry and responded not with war, but with curiosity. Suddenly, the galaxy didn't feel so isolated. Earth doubled its efforts to construct the Unity Array, a multi-spectrum communication and defense grid orbiting the planet. Built from scavenged alien alloys and reverse-engineered tech, it was humanity's first post-war infrastructure. Not a weapon. A beacon. It announced Earth's survival, its sovereignty, and its openness to alliance, to warning, and if necessary, to war. As global restoration accelerated, another profound shift occurred. Earth had once lived under national divisions. But now, leadership had evolved into what scholars began calling the Accord, a council not of politicians, but survivors, scientists, commanders, cultural leaders. No one cared for titles anymore. The only currency now was action, clarity, and sacrifice. The Accord issued a declaration to all human colonies, stations, and hidden outposts that had gone silent during the invasion. The message was simple: the war is not over, but Earth stands. Come home. Or call, and we'll come to you. Within weeks, signals started arriving, crackled voices from Mars habitats, from lunar bunkers, from deep ocean arcologies once thought lost. Survivors responding. Some had built their own empires in exile. Now they aligned once again. Earth was not just recovering. It was reconnecting. Meanwhile, UDP science divisions unraveled secrets embedded in the enemy's abandoned machines. Language modules hinted at internal dissent. Not all members of their species had supported the invasion. In fact, ancient civil war echoes existed in their code. Earth wasn't just their target, it had unknowingly stepped into a conflict thousands of years old. One faction saw humanity as an opportunity. Another, as a threat that needed to be erased before it could evolve further. It explained everything: the silence, the brutality, the overkill. Humanity had stumbled into a galactic argument, and won the first round. But they knew better than to celebrate early. The Accord approved Project Threshold, an interstellar expedition fleet, 4 ships, including a rebuilt Ullman, designed not for battle, but for first contact. Their purpose: find out who else existed, who else remembered Earth's scream, and what lay beyond the empire that had tried to crush them. Final training cycles began. Pilots were selected. Engineers, linguists, diplomats, soldiers. No one joined because of rank. They joined because of belief. Because they had lived through the fall of New York, the rise of resistance, and the final collapse of alien control. They weren't exploring out of curiosity. They were pushing forward because Earth never wanted to be caught unprepared again. As Project Threshold prepared for launch, Earth's skies looked different. No longer filled with fire or fear. Clean blue arcs, dotted with construction towers and new solar stations, spoke of progress. The planet hadn't just survived the war. It had been reforged by it. What began as a massacre ended as a message. Humanity was not prey. Earth was not a prize. And this species would never be underestimated again. They called it the Long Silence. After Earth's counterattack crippled the enemy's Arc node and dismantled their network command over the planet, a strange calm followed. Days passed without retaliation. No new warships arrived. No orbital strikes. No counter-invasion. It was as if the enemy, so precise and relentless before, had gone quiet. Humanity didn't trust it. The UDP watched the stars like a hawk, scanning for any hint of returning fleets. Ground teams maintained readiness. Orbital defenses stayed on alert. And still, nothing came. Whispers filled the Accord chambers. Some believed the enemy had truly been defeated. Others warned it was a feint, a pause before a more devastating strike. But the data told a different story. Nothing moved in their space. Long-range probes launched beyond the asteroid belt confirmed it. The invaders were gone, not just from orbit, but from the entire system. Debris fields stretched for light minutes, frozen in silence. Not even automated scouts remained. Whatever force had come for Earth had vanished without a trace. But humans knew better than to rest. Earth's survival wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far more uncertain. Every hard-fought victory demanded more than celebration, it demanded preparation. And so, Earth didn't waste its moment. The world shifted overnight into a new phase of existence: reconstruction, consolidation, projection. There would be no return to the old world. Humanity had been tempered in war, and now it was forging a future no longer based on survival, but on dominance, readiness, and expansion. Global engineering teams, once scattered, now worked under unified command. Cities once reduced to ash were rebuilt with hybrid technologies, alien alloys fused with Earth-based materials. From the ruins of shattered skyscrapers, new vertical megastructures rose, embedded with defense grids and satellite uplinks. Transportation was overhauled. High-speed suborbital rails connected continents. Lunar infrastructure received rapid upgrades, and the first Mars transit corridor was officially opened within a year. More importantly, Earth's military doctrine had evolved. The era of regional defense and siloed technologies was over. UDP issued a final directive: planetary unity through strategic deterrence. All military assets were reclassified under a single force. * the Earth Guard Accord. * It wasn't a military in the traditional sense. It was a shield, a sword, and a signal to the stars. It included AI-piloted fleets, nanite-forged carrier swarms, and, most importantly, Earth's first deep space-capable battleships. The lead ship was christened Vigilance, a 4-kilometer-long vessel capable of interstellar travel, housing both civilian and military personnel, and built for both exploration and retaliation. It wasn't designed to conquer. It was designed to end any conflict before it began. On its hull, etched in alloy script, was the phrase that defined this new era: never again silent. But as the fleets grew and Earth's defenses matured, something else began to stir: philosophy. The war hadn't just changed how humans fought. It had changed how they thought. The enemy hadn't attacked for resources, territory, or diplomacy. They had attacked because they feared what humanity would become. That fear said more about humans than any self-made proclamation ever could. And the galaxy had heard it. The Unity Array, Earth's orbiting communications lattice, picked up something unexpected: an encoded signal. Not a transmission from the invaders, but a reply. Distant, fragmented, but unmistakably alien. It carried symbols never before seen, accompanied by harmonic frequencies that matched Earth's old Voyager recordings. A different species. One that had watched from afar. And now, moved by Earth's defiance, was reaching out. First contact protocols were drafted within days. The Accord wasn't caught unprepared. Linguistic teams worked in shifts, assisted by AI frameworks that could process cross-species logic. The response message was short, clear, and irrevocable. We are Earth. We remember. We endure. We welcome those who seek peace. And we warn those who bring war. But not all parts of the galaxy would seek peace. Scouts launched beyond the heliopause revealed signs of activity: abandoned way stations, dead worlds stripped of life, ruins of species that had once stood, now broken. Earth had been one target. There had been others before. The invaders were not acting alone. They were part of something larger. A hierarchy, a machine, or perhaps an ideology so ancient it no longer needed leaders, just enforcers. Humanity took this as gospel: the stars were not safe. But neither was Earth passive anymore. Terraforming protocols were accelerated across the solar system. Titan, Europa, and Mars received full-scale human habitats. Children born on these worlds were no longer seen as colonists. They were Earthkind, citizens of a new frontier, raised with the knowledge that humanity did not belong to one planet, but many. Schools taught interstellar navigation, quantum mechanics, and military history side by side with literature and philosophy. Art changed. Culture evolved. Stories were no longer about ancient myths, they were about resistance, unity, and the future. And that future moved faster than anyone expected. Within 3 years of the invasion's end, the Vigilance made its first jump to Proxima Centauri, establishing a forward station named Outpost Dawn. Contact with the alien signal origin was established. The species called themselves the Ilari. They were old, wise, and once, long ago, they had also fought the same invaders. They had lost. But seeing Earth survive gave them new hope. Together, a coalition began. Earth was no longer alone. It would not be a peaceful coalition. Not entirely. The Ilari warned of the Covenant beyond, a network of ancient species that believed only in stagnation, control, and the crushing of potential threats before they rose. The very ideology Earth had faced. But now, Earth was the unpredictable element. The anomaly that refused to fall. The Accord did not fear them. In fact, Earth sent a second fleet, this one not of war, but of presence. Science ships, cultural emissaries, carriers filled with recovered history, music, art, and philosophy. A declaration that humanity was not a virus. It was a force of will, of chaos, of creation. And nothing would erase that now. The final monument built on Earth after the war wasn't a weapon or a shield. It was a library. Etched in every known language, human and alien, was the phrase spoken by the first resistance leader who died during the fall of New York. Asterisk. They came to silence us. But we became the storm. Asterisk. From that day forward, the stars would know one undeniable truth: Earth had survived the impossible. And now, humanity was coming. Not in conquest. Not in submission. But in strength. And this time, the galaxy would listen.